What if you went to work one night and found yourself, your actual self, unconscious in a room that shouldn't exist? Not a dream, not a breakdown. You on a hospital bed, behind a door that was never there before. And the longer you stood in that doorway, the more you understood that the life you'd been living for the past 7 years, the apartment, the colleagues, the coffee you made that morning, none of it was supposed to happen. Because you were never supposed to walk out of that building alive. This is the story of Ward Zero and the nurse who found it.
Nadia Orl had worked the night shift at St. Aurelius Medical Center for 7 years. Not because she loved the hours, nobody loves 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., but because nights were quieter, fewer administrators, fewer interruptions, just the work. She was the kind of nurse other nurses called when something went wrong. Steady hands, fast thinking. The person you want in the room when the monitors start screaming. On the night this story takes place, nothing was screaming. It was a Tuesday in late October, a slow night. 3 post-surgical patients on her floor, 2 of them sleeping, 1 reading a paperback he'd brought from home. She'd done her 1 a.m. checks, restocked the supply cart, made a second coffee she didn't need. At 1:31 a.m., the building's power dipped. Not a full outage, just a brownout, 2 or 3 seconds, the kind that happens when the city grid hiccups on a cold night and the hospital's backup systems absorb the load. The fluorescent lights on the 3rd floor stuttered, dimmed, came back. The monitors held. Nobody woke up. Nadia noted it in the logbook the way she noted everything. Time, duration, no patient impact. Routine. What she didn't know, what nobody in the building knew, is that Ward Zero runs on the same electrical infrastructure as everything else. And when the power stuttered, its threshold briefly lost coherence, enough to become visible, enough to become a door. At 1:47 a.m., she walked to the end of the 3rd floor corridor to check the supply closet inventory. She had walked this corridor 10,000 times. She knew every door on it, which is why she stopped. There are things your brain does when it encounters something impossible. It stalls, it loops back, it tries the input again, hoping for a different result. Nadia stood at the end of the corridor and looked at the door, and her brain did all 3. The corridor had 12 doors. She knew their numbers by feel. Supply closet, linen storage, the out-of-service lift, then the fire exit. This was door 13, and it was labeled in the same font, the same laminated hospital signage as every other door on the floor. Ward Zero. No room number, no department, just Ward Zero. She checked both directions. Empty corridor. The fluorescent lights buzzed at their usual frequency. Nothing else was different. She tried the handle. It opened. The room was a standard single-occupancy ward. 1 bed, 1 monitor, 1 window with the blinds half drawn. The overhead light was on, that particular flat hospital white, the kind that makes everyone look a little unwell. There was a patient in the bed. Nadia stepped closer, and then she stopped breathing for a moment. The patient was a woman in her early 30s. Dark hair loose on the pillow, hospital gown, an IV line in the left arm, eyes closed, chest rising and falling, alive but deeply unconscious. The monitor beside the bed showed a slow, stable heartbeat. The woman's face was her own. Not similar, not a resemblance. Her face, her hands, the small scar at the left eyebrow from a cycling accident at age 19. Nadia stood at the foot of the bed for a long time, long enough that she became aware of her own breathing. In, out, overlapping with the slow beep of the monitor. 2 rhythms, same source. On the chart clipped to the end of the bed, one line had been filled in. Under date of admission, October 14th, 2017. 7 years ago, almost to the day.
Here's what Nadia remembered about October 14th, 2017. She remembered arriving for her shift. She remembered the elevator. She remembered a patient coding on the second floor, a call she answered because she was closest, because that was the kind of nurse she was. And then she remembered waking up at home, in her own bed, with no memory of getting there. A gap of approximately 4 hours. Her supervisor had called it shock response, suggested she take a few days off. She had taken 2, then come back because the work was the work. She had never thought about those 4 hours again. Until now. She looked at the chart more carefully. Under attending physician, the field was blank. Under diagnosis, one word: threshold. She had never seen that word used as a medical diagnosis. She took out her phone to search it and discovered she had no signal, not low signal, none, as if the room existed outside the building's infrastructure entirely. She looked at the window. Outside, instead of the hospital car park she should have been seeing from the 3rd floor, there was nothing. Not darkness, not fog, just white. Flat, textureless, infinite white.
There is a concept in emergency medicine called the threshold interval, the window of time between clinical death and biological death. The heart stops, the brain doesn't know yet. Somewhere between those 2 moments, there is a gap. Most people who survive cardiac events report nothing from that gap. Some report something else entirely. In 2021, a team of researchers at NYU Langone published a study on recalled awareness during resuscitation, patients who reported vivid, structured experiences during confirmed cardiac arrest. Not hallucinations, not dreams, something with internal logic and continuity. The study was widely covered and then quietly filed away, because what do you do with data that doesn't fit the framework? Here is the framework it didn't fit. In 2017, on the 2nd floor of a hospital in the Midwest, a 31-year-old nurse went into cardiac arrest while assisting a resuscitation. She was down for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. She was brought back. She went home 2 days later. She never asked what happened during those 4 minutes, but Ward 0 had been keeping records. Nadia understood it the way you understand something you already knew. Ward 0 was not a room in the hospital. It was the room between. Every person who had ever been brought back, truly brought back from the edge, had spent time here. Their body, their actual continuous biological self had never left. They were still here, in the threshold, in the white outside the window, in the slow beep of the monitor. What walked out of the hospital was something that continued, a life that kept going past its intended endpoint. 7 years of shifts, 7 years of coffee and paperwork and saving other people from the edge she had already crossed. And the body in the bed, her body, had been here the entire time, waiting, stable, patient. Here is the part that took her longer to understand. The continuation, the version that walked out, doesn't disappear the moment the original stirs. There is a window, brief, exact, closing fast. The threshold can only hold one version of a person at a time. While the original sleeps, the continuation exists freely. But the moment the original begins to wake, the 2 states become mutually exclusive. One persists, one doesn't. The door doesn't close to trap you. It closes to force the choice. The monitor beeped, and then it changed. Not flatline. Not the long single tone of cardiac arrest. A different sound, one she recognized immediately. The sound of a patient waking up. The Nadia in the bed moved. Fingers first, then a slow turn of the head, and then eyes opening. Not the confused half-focus of someone coming out of sedation. clear, immediate, already understanding exactly where she was and what was happening. She looked at Nadia in the doorway, and the door began to close. Nadia ran. The gap was 6 inches when she reached it. She hit the door with both palms and shoved. One terrible second of resistance, hydraulic pressure against everything she had, and then it gave, and she stumbled through into the corridor. She turned back. Through the narrowing gap, she could see the room, the bed, the woman in it, her original, her source. 7 years of waiting compressed into one clear-eyed moment, was still looking at the door, not with fear, not with anger, with the specific expression of someone who finally understands that the choice was never hers to make. The monitor beside her bed showed a flatline. It had gone flat the moment Nadia crossed the threshold, not because the original died, because Nadia chose to live. The door closed. Click. The laminated sign on the front now read, "Supply Closet." It had always read that.
Nadia finished her shift. She did the 3 a.m. checks, the 5 a.m. checks, the handover notes. She drove home in the gray, early morning, made coffee, sat at her kitchen table. She is still a nurse, still works nights, still the person other nurses call when the monitors start screaming. But she requested a transfer away from St. Aurelius 6 weeks after that night, and she has never said why. There are currently 63,000 in-hospital cardiac arrest events in the United States every year. Survival rates have improved dramatically. Somewhere between 20 and 25% of patients are successfully resuscitated. That's roughly 15,000 people a year who come back. The question Ward Zero raises, the one I haven't been able to put down since I found this story, is not whether they came back. It's what they left behind when they did. The next time someone you know says they have no memory of a medical emergency, the next time someone describes a gap, hours unaccounted for, a strange, flat feeling when they try to remember, don't tell them it was the medication. Some rooms don't show up on the floor plan. That doesn't mean they aren't full. Made it to the end? Drop a 0 in the comments. You'll know why. And if this is your first time here, every story on this channel is a door. You decide whether to open it.